Hello, hello. Welcome to Talking Pedagogy with Pat and Rafa. I'm Rafa.
I'm Pat, and it's so good to be in your presence again, Rafa. And I'm just going to comment again on how much I love the textures in your background. And that's so Reggio to think about the aesthetics, and you've captured such a wonderful feeling that I just appreciate it. I love being in places of beauty. We don't have enough of them,
I
so thank you.
appreciate that. I think it's actually Reggio that has taught me to pay more attention to these things
Yes,
and
me
then learn
too.
more about the aesthetics. I'm Mexican, right? Mexican American, and pay more attention to what I love about my family and the home, the blue house in Coyoacan in Mexico City, and just inspired my
Ah,
apartment. So if you're on the podcast and not seeing the video, my background is marjarell blue. It's that really intense blue from Frida and Diego Diaz
mm,
house. So thank you,
beautiful. Yes.
thank you.
So, yeah, and it's funny that you're talking about that because I don't know that we talked a little bit about it. I think, yes, we did at one of our podcasts about how important it is in the Reggio approach to really connect and bring in the culture that surrounds your school. We talked a little bit about, I think, Bronfenbrenner
Hmm.
and
The ecology, right? Like the child's at the
ecological
center.
systems. Yes.
Another outside is the educators and the families, maybe, and outside of that is the wider school community. But the circles get bigger and wider, and I think it's like bigger society, right?
Yeah, and how do teachers bring not only the individual cultures of the families in, but the culture that surrounds them that is their neighborhood? How
Mhm.
do they really, kind of get in touch with that and honor it? So yeah, I think we talked about that in our last podcast. But yeah, so it's funny that your blue wall kind of brought all of that up.
Yeah, that's true. In terms of me at the center of my world, I guess, and then going out into my ancestors and just what I love about Mexico. Not afraid of color, that's for sure. Not into the beige.
Yeah.
Neutrals has a space, and we talk about actually that with classrooms. But in terms of my home, I like playing with color more than I ever have.
I love that. It's important. What brings us comfort? It's
Yeah.
really important to think about those things. And sometimes we'll talk to teachers when they're thinking about the environment as a third teacher and say, really think about where is it you find yourself gravitating towards in the classroom and why. And just being so aware of that nuanced feeling that each of us have in environments and thinking further about it, digging deeper about what do children feel when they come into the space and the room. And
Yeah, especially now. I mean, it'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about what's going on at the time of this recording. The murder
yeah,
of two people in Minneapolis and by federal / ICE agents, and that also has an impact on our work in the classroom, right? In terms of how we're feeling,
yeah,
our children can have questions. We also have to protect our children. So all of that has to do, I guess, to bring it back to this theory a little bit with Bronfenbrenner and that they call it that way of thinking is just really helpful to really center myself at least in terms of what to consider.
well, agreed. And I think young children especially need that sense of being able to feel safe. And I agree with you that we as adults right now don't feel so safe. So how is
Yeah.
that coming into the classroom? And you and I spoke about it's hard to just begin any conversation without holding a moment to say where we all are right now in this country. It's a big deal, a lot
Yeah.
of the things that are happening. And educators are having to hold a lot of that when, a child can be, we saw it, a child taken this, yeah, this won't be in real time when you're listening to this podcast, perhaps, but in this month, January of 2026, a 5-year-old was separated from their parent as they were both taken in.
Liam.
And the educators tried to say, let us keep this child. We'll be responsible. We'll take responsibility for the child. And that wasn't allowed. So, yeah, just imagining, what educators have on their plates right now.
And also the possibilities of highlighting the importance of our work in countering those narratives out there, like that's okay, that children are and people in general can be treated as inhuman, as less than human. So a lot of work on our plates. But going back to comfort to the importance of us having our grounding and our comfort. And a lot of that has to do with accepting what is, not as Prentice Hempel, someone Hempel who I listen to every once in a while, who said that acceptance not as apathy, but acceptance as grounding, so that you know what the ways forward are at any moment. I think it's really important.
Mm. Yeah, and that even if you don't, that you've built a strong enough community with and culture within your school, hopefully, that everybody holds all of that pain and uncertainty for one another. But also, I think, Rafa, thinking about the fact that children are seeing a lot of images now, they're hearing a lot of these stories, and adults do have to be sensitive enough who are working with young children to create in your meeting times, being sensitive enough to know if there's a reason that maybe you need to find a story that could
Mhm.
bring some of those questions that children might be having out and hold space for that time. And a lot of times families are so stressed, and so when you as an educator can create those spaces in your classroom and unpack some of the fear and uncertainty with for young children if they're feeling it,
Mhm.
it's just another part of the job.
Yeah, and I would say as a general guide for myself with those things is just knowing that you don't need the answers. You really just need to listen, and I think reflect and make sure to let those topics live over time. If you have answers that you're confident in, definitely bring them up. But lots of times, I listen and document the children's conversations or questions, and I might bring them up to colleagues. I might bring them up to families and be like, "What do you think about this?" This came up for a bit when we were doing a lot of work around Day of the Dead, El Dia de los Muertos, in November, leading
Oh
up to
yeah.
November. And a lot of families were definitely on board, but some families, understandably, were like, "You're talking about death with children,"
Mhm.
and yeah, yeah. And what I found interesting, adults had a lot more discomfort around it than children.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, because children have awareness of it from very early on, and parents do want to shield them because it is. I mean, we all grapple with it in our adult lives, trying to understand this journey of being human. But you want to protect your young child from that insecurity or that anxiety that can happen when they realize that there is death, but they do realize it, and that goes back to the strong image of the child, and really knowing that children are so aware, so sensitive, and pick up on so much, and do have questions and have thoughts, and to not honor that is not a it's not the Reggio way. Reggio way is
No,
definitely to step into it, but be careful and respect to the cultures of the families who are concerned, and help build the bridge to saying, look, we're going to keep you in the loop. This is, and we'll let you know how we're doing these things, but this is a topic that is coming up and that we're talking about, because I can understand that parents do want to understand what it is that you're transmitting.
yeah. I mean, just the other day, actually, one of my kiddos came up to me and asked me about my grandfather. This is just this past week, actually. And we had talked about this months ago because I made a short story on Google Slides of my
Oh,
grandfather. And I read it to the kids.
please share it
Uh,
with me after
oh, I
this.
will.
I would
I'll
love
send
to
to
see it.
you. Yes. And I read it to them several times, like a storybook. And it was basically about my grandfather and what he was like. And then one day, as he was sleeping, his heart started to pump less and less until it stopped. And then, and how then what we did to bury him and how we cried and we also celebrated his life. And the other day, someone was like, and well, in Spanish, like, they're like, Rafa, ¿qué pasó con tu abuelo? What happened with your grandfather? And
Oh.
so these stories really stick with children. And that same child also, back in November, was telling her mom, one of her moms, that grandpa's really old and we need to start taking more photos because we need to remember him when he's not here anymore. He's four,
Oh.
three turning four. So I
Mm.
just think it's really powerful that she was able to grapple with that and with such ease, and had a clear comfort with the ambiguity of it all. And I think that's kind of one of the goals that I have whenever I'm working with children and adults is to navigate that
Yeah,
ambiguity. That's the way the world is.
that's a great story.
So
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and please do send me that. I would love to get to know your grandfather.
yes,
I've heard you talk about him, but I'd love to see the photos.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, time, something that we never can completely control, right? And yet it's such a big thing that we grapple with again every single day, and especially in the classrooms. That's something that we've been talking a lot about in some of the coaching sessions. How do we as adults, step into this, making more time
Hmm.
when something of interest is happening, to really let go of something else, like quickly kind of check in with yourself and say, how important is it if I don't get to this other thing today? How, why can't I say we're going to do this for another 15 or 20 minutes, and we're going to take something else out of our daily schedule away because
Hmm.
this obviously is more important. And so I don't know if that's not such a graceful segue into another topic, but I do think that is something that I've been working a lot with teachers on, is like really trying to be mindful of children need more time, and how do you make that when you're feeling the pressure of your schedule.
Hmm. How are in the context you work in, did they both schools have a good amount of autonomy over schedule or
They do, but I think what we were also grappling with is routines. Like, how much do you want to disturb a routine because they're so important to young children? And I think getting them to understand that those meetings where you come together and say, "Oh, we have a decision to make.
mm,
We have something else that we could do today, but it seems like everybody's really enjoying this center time and that you're all very busy, or we're doing a project and so many of you are not finished. I think maybe we should talk about what we're going to do here. Should we continue or should we?" So bringing them in as your collaborative partners about having some of those decisions, that's a real shift for a lot of people, you know?
absolutely. I mean, I was just talking to one of my assistant teachers who started recently. We had someone go on maternity leave, and they were looking to change diapers, 2 year olds change
Mhm.
diapers and keep on things moving to get to circle time. And I paused and I'm like, I noticed we're really in a rush. Like, what are we in a rush for? And they're like, guys, we just need to get to circle time. And I'm like, why? What's the plan for circle time? And it was something along the lines of like wanted to make sure that, but she's newer. She wanted the other teacher to feel like she what knew what the routine was. And then I said, oh, well, if you want to change diapers, why interrupt the play when they want to do that? And you need to, they need, we want our children engaged anyway, because you need to step out for our changing tables right outside. Like we don't have walls in our school, but you kind of have to leave the little
Yeah.
classroom area, so, but you can still see everything. So I think
Mhm.
I'll just change the diapers as children are continuing to play. Why would we interrupt children's play, then have them sit down and then change their diapers and then they struggle to sit down because they're two, right? So anyway, just a reminder that a lot of times allowing kids time then it's just more developmentally appropriate and
Yeah.
results in more learning because if they're playing, they're learning. So
Yes. And as they get older, to have a say so in some of the choices that are going to be made throughout the day when changes are made, and to understand that children can be flexible, like,
that's a huge one. Yeah.
yeah.
That they can be flexible. I think that reflects a strong image. I think sometimes I hear that we can't, like, let's say there's an opportunity to combine classrooms, and sometimes I hear that, like, well, it's not in the interest of the children because it's not a clear routine, which to an extent, yes, you want a consistent routine. And on the other side of that is you build community through surprises. And you need a way to communicate that surprise.
Right.
So, like, oh, the schedule's different, right? So I guess it goes back to so much of what we do is addressed by strengthening our own capacities and our own capabilities.
Oh, that's a very,
Scaffold,
yeah, exactly.
scaffold for children who are capable with the right supports of handling transitions, and it helps them then handle future transitions because they get more tools, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like you said, children do like surprise, and they like routine. They like both, and
mhm,
and not being afraid to mix things up a bit is a good thing. And it also, once you get to know your students well enough, your children well enough, I think you can have more of that trust. I think at this point in the year, and again, this is January, you should have a pretty good understanding of the community that you've been kind of developing, and the connections with your children, and kind of be able to forecast a little bit about how much you can have more flexibility.
Yeah.
But I think meeting times are something that I'm finding with the Reggio approach anyway. Teachers are still, a lot of the teachers I'm working with are still becoming more acquainted with as to what are these meeting times supposed to be about, and how can I get more information from the children from this meeting time so that I can understand more about what an interest might be that is starting to develop, and how can I support those conversations. And so we've been talking about bringing artifacts to those meetings,
Mm. How
and
old?
just
How old are the kids?
threes,
Of
fours,
course.
fives. But
Mixed age? So, or is separated?
there's some of them are a bit mixed,
Okay. I'm just
but
curious.
I would say threes and fours are together, and older fours and fives pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. But I would say that that is something that, if you're not used to doing that, again, not used to looking at your children as your collaborators,
Mm.
then you're not quite sure what that meeting time really is there for, besides to tell children what they're going to be doing. And
Yeah.
what we're doing is a mind shift of saying, no, it's really about finding out more about what they are doing so that
Mm-hmm.
you can have a better understanding of, wow, tomorrow when I come in, what invitation can I make for children that might really support furthering that investigation? Because I just heard from our meeting time, because I had some very specific wonderings and I had some pictures, and I was able to give them some examples of things that I'm seeing and find out more about, is that what I'm seeing or is it not? Then I as that engineer, architect, and designer can have that time when I'm preparing for tomorrow to say, wow, I think I have an idea of
Mm-hmm.
something that could be. It came up more specifically, a new teacher was sharing that she had two projects that seemed to be getting ready to launch. And one was about different ways that animals move and their footprints and their ways of movement, walking, jumping, whatever it might be. And the I can't quite remember what the other one was. Oh, fairies and fantasy
Hmm.
and fairy tales.
I
And
love
so
that.
she was very curious, like, how do I hold both of those? And so we had to dig deeper as to how she decided that those were projects that the children needed more of her guidance or support with,
Mm-hmm.
or if in fact the fantasy play and the drama center was just something that they were doing because it was fun, and that might be okay, that there was not really more to do with it. It's
Mm.
at this point, like, what are you working to make decisions around? Do you have enough information about what they're doing? What is it? Do they have everything that they need? And maybe what they're doing is all they want to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
Is it that you're looking for a project? Is it that you're looking to see how you can interject? And that's, I think, the challenging thing for a lot of people who work in the Reggio Emilia approach, and especially when you're first starting, is how do you make those decisions? And that's where those meetings come in. And it's also where time, like we were talking about earlier, where that comes in, where you're not in a rush to define something for children, but instead you're just kind of waiting to see. So then it was a rich discussion, because actually this teacher, who's very self-reflective, was like, you know what, I'm in a rush, I'm really in a rush, because I want to hold on to these things, I want something to hold on to.
Yeah.
and and so then we talked about invitations that she could make with the other one, with the animals, and was it, that one seemed to have a little bit more of need of support from her, as far as like different invitations, because the children did seem to have questions and have more things that they were looking for.
So it was more of a back and forth. It was more of a ball
Exactly.
toss, as you would say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Like, right.
Yes,
There's more of a ball tossing
absolutely.
with that's interesting. I mean, meeting times are tricky. I should say that, like, they're tricky because and there's right, like, I think at meeting times, important time to sing together too.
Yep.
There's a limited amount of attention depending on the ages, and
Yes.
like, so sometimes it's like multiple meeting times, like interspersed throughout a day.
Or
Um,
small group meeting times that
small
are
group
built
meeting,
in.
that sometimes organically happen during open playtime, right? And
Yeah.
I just think about all the social skills are that need to be modeled and reinforced and to an extent taught about conversation,
Yes.
how the questions about how does it look like for twos versus three versus four versus fives. And anyway, it's really it demands a lot of thinking and intention to do well, but it's worth it. It's worth the messiness.
It's worth the messiness, and it's key because if you don't have that time, and again, it can be small meeting time, and it doesn't have to be, like you said, an organized meeting. It could be when the children are in an area and they are exploring
Yes.
something, and that becomes that back and forth ball toss that you're ready for, and
I
that
mean,
you know how to have your wonderings and you know how to,
yeah.
without disturbing or interjecting too much, but finding your way in to find out what's going on can happen in a lot of different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I find when children are already naturally making groups and then I approach and I observe and it depends. And oftentimes I try to just be next to them and then see if they notice me, which tells me that they kind of want to engage. And if they don't,
Yes.
I'll stay
Yes.
longer. Or sometimes I will say like, oh, I noticed X. And that's when lots of times the richest conversations
Yeah.
happen. But then it's an opportunity to bring it to the carpet, to the circle, more formal circle time, and have others see what's possible, right? So both both the organic and the formal circle times can really do a lot together.
Inviting children to share in the meeting time what you've observed, and give them that opportunity to kind of tell the rest of them what they were doing or what they were working on is a perfect, oh my gosh, that's so empowering for young children.
So empowering.
So carving that time out into your meetings is really important. Yeah. Children's voice, finding more and more time in your day for children's voices to be heard and to be just shared, and that's how we learn the most in this approach is, and also just being quiet and observing, like you said, Rafa, that's so important. I've had teachers who set up cameras, and I think we might have talked about this, and not in a voyeuristic way,
Mhm.
but in a way of just wanting to know what is really happening, that sometimes you cannot have the time, like you were
Sure.
saying. And I've seen when the teachers look back at it, they're like, I never would have guessed that that's what they were doing.
That's so cool. That's the
Yeah,
best.
like they were so, like they were figuring out trajectories and how a ball is going to move if they turned it this way or that way, and just really deep thinking was going on, but the teacher would have missed it had she not had that up, or if she had gone over and started uh, interjecting or maybe interfering in the play. So just finding ways to you know observe when you're very busy, because we know that teachers are.
Yeah, yeah. Observe when you're. One approach that I've been playing with at Mi Casita is more with myself, but slowly I'm introducing it to the team because I'm in the classroom, right, too. So I I think about like, yes, it's really you can't change everything at once, nor should you, right? And you want to do things
Yeah.
for the children and change things with the children also, ideally. Um, but I find like again, really paying attention to the organization of materials, what materials are getting touched, which are not getting touched, and maybe like even once a month, if the once a week is probably better, switching things out or daily if something's just super evident from one day to the next to change.
Yeah,
That's that's that keeps things dynamic and children are and help you see children interact with materials in different ways,
absolutely.
which
Yeah, that environment as the third teacher, again, going back to yeah, not letting it become stagnant, but yeah, those
and like
invitations.
and like your environment is your planning.
Mhm. Uh-oh, Rafa, for some reason we couldn't hear you. Yeah, perhaps your mic went off. But agreed, yeah. Like the planning is going to be coming so much from observations. I'm just vamping everybody while we wait for Rafa to come back with us. But I just find that that's just the challenge too, is like how do you have the time to make those observations when you're thinking about all of the different balls that you're tossing around in a day?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It died. My other one died. I've been using
So
it as
you've got 2
I,
clip-on
you
mics. Oh
know,
my
okay,
gosh, you're getting high tech,
slight,
Rafa.
slight tangent. I ordered one and it didn't work, and so I returned it, and then they sent me another one immediately, but they ended up sending me the 2 pack instead of the one.
So you're lousy with these mics now.
Yeah, yeah. I just got that. Wait, this one sounds better, I feel.
Sounds good.
Did the previous one sound okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
they all do.
Um, but yeah, no, I was just briefly saying that like the environment is planning. Like I guess for me that has helped because sometimes before I thought that like, oh, I have to plan everything all the time, and realize that like no, like looking at the space is a big part of the planning. So if the space is developed and the space is engaging, my planning is successful. And yeah,
Yeah.
and then there's a part of planning that's like, what might I do in the future, and that's important too. But that's a part of it, I guess, is
Yeah.
what I've learned from my own.
Yes. Yes, and I think in our one of our next sessions, I would love to get back to how the 100 languages show up in some of that planning, that intentional planning. Really being a little, having some conversation with you and bringing in some of the thoughts that we might have from having worked with atelieristas and the way that work that they're doing with young children is giving them the tools that they need to really express themselves in all these incredible ways with materials. And how do you plan that? How is your school
I would
planning that?
love
Yeah.
to. I mean, even very briefly, I feel like such a powerful next step so often is what's another material, especially with threes, fours, fives, as they're as and some 2 year olds as they're really leaning into representing things. Like, what are other
Yes.
materials that they can represent this concept with?
Mhm.
You know, what are other ways we can make planes? What
Yeah.
are other way? Uh, and yeah, which involves the 100 languages.
Yes. And I think teachers being, again, that word flexible towards children's expressions when they bring in another language to something that you weren't expecting in a project. I had a teacher tell me a great story about she wanted to do this whole exploration of fall and trees and leaves and, do autumn basically. And one of the children said, I'd really rather be a talking tree. And so she was like, well, okay, well, how can we do that? And then they had a whole conversation about how they could do that. And they ended up, the children all got excited to become talking trees. And she let them make their own masks using paper and paints. But I thought that was a really great example of they had another language that they were more interested in exploring around trees. And so, anyway, yeah, it's just there's so many ways in using the Reggio Emilia approach. There's so many ideas that can come from the dance that you do with children, but it's for me, it starts with adults being flexible enough to agree to the dance changing whenever that happens and not being afraid of it, but going, all right, well, let's see what happens. And then, one of the things we were talking about from that story is, and then when that was over, what happened next? And the teacher was like, what do you mean? And I said, was the forest finished or was there more that you could do?
Hmm.
You know, and that's when you, as the architect, designer, engineer, step in and say, I have another invitation that could bring us into a whole nother level of learning about nature, about trees
Hmm.
being homes. The children might have other interests, and that's when you get to dance back with them. Like you get to offer another step. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The dance. It reminds me of a conversation I had with Eva, who founded Mi Casita, and she's in the classroom at times too. She does something called El Laberinto, which is a really magical space. She comes into the classroom. It also allows teachers to step out. But during this, they were making nests, and
Oh,
children, this child, like with like carton, whatever they found, and some
uh
took
huh.
like toothpicks and then took the clay that was on the table and put made eggs out of them. And as one child in Spanish was like, "This is a tiger egg. This is a this is a seagull egg. This is an elephant egg." And Eva came to the post like reflection meeting and was like, like we know they don't lay those animals don't lay eggs.
Right.
She did say, do humans lay eggs? Does your mom lay eggs? And I mean, and then the children were like, no, even though someone was one of the adults was like, well, you do have women do have eggs. Like, anyways, that was interesting. But uh, and but what they came to the conclusion was they were not going to try to correct the misconception at this moment. They actually wanted to lean into the magic. That's what they
Uh
called it,
huh.
the magic, and see what
Mm,
else came from the magic of these other ways of thinking. So talking trees.
absolutely. And I think that's, gosh, that's such a, that's a great story. A great thing to think about too is that when do you, so like with the talking trees, you know, first of all, I believe trees do talk. So there's always that. They make sounds, you know, and they've, science has proven that trees actually communicate with one another. So, but being not afraid to, as that, again, that teacher, to step in to saying, I wonder, do trees talk? How do
Mm,
trees communicate? Finding out if children are interested in digging in a little bit, because you know, Rafa, you and I were talking about how do you weave in the academic learning. That's kind of how you do it, is that you're not afraid to a honor whatever it is that the magic is of whatever it is that is being explored in the language of the children, and then you're not afraid to step in and say, I wonder if there's more learning that can happen here. Can we take this a little bit further? Is there more science that we could learn from the trees? You know, or would the children be interested if if I showed a little clip about the sounds that trees make? Like, don't
mm,
be afraid or in a hurry. Find your own passion, your own interest, because we know Malaguzzi believes that adults and their learning is as important as the children's, to continue your own learning. And I have to say that was the most exciting thing that happened last week in a coaching session. Was a teacher who's new to this approach said, do you know what, I'm so excited because I'm learning about migration. I knew nothing about migration, but the children wanted to understand migration. They a child brought in a question about birds, and then it started this whole conversation, and the children just were on fire to know more about migration. So she's like, I
mm,
had to go home and really start digging into what is, yeah, I need to know more about migration. How do birds know when to leave?
mm.
You know, and so she was so excited because she was like, and she's a mom too, so she was like, I'm learning things that I can teach my children because these children are teaching me to ask more questions.
Yeah,
And I just thought that's how teachers don't get burned out when they're engaged in the Reggio Emilia approach. You never know what could happen or what you're going to have to learn more about yourself because the children have an interest.
I love that. I mean, there's a way for, and we're collaborating with the children, right? So when you said migration, I thought of human migration and how that's such a
Oh my
important
god.
to bring up. So I mean, I have a book called Migrantes. It's a wordless book, up in my estantes in my bookshelf, and I think it would be interesting in that case to bring in another use of the word migration, to just to continue to give children that window of and language to then make more sense of what's happening
Yeah.
around them. So it's a very rich example.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, we've been talking for a while.
Yeah, we
Hopefully anybody who's listening found it interesting, because today we kind of just, it was a stream of consciousness. It was all over the
It
place.
was a flow. I think if anything, if you're listening or watching, like these type of conversations are very Reggio in that we have theories about things that are happening. We're retelling our own documentation verbally, if you will. We didn't go too much into the exact theories that inform us, if you will, or but in a way, this is kind of just embodying, I think, the approach.
Yes, it was fun to play ball with you tonight. And I look forward to doing it again soon. And also, I want to invite anybody who's listening. You know, there are many ways for you to get in touch with us. And Rafa's great about making sure those are always posted in wherever you're going to be listening. So I have a company called Connecting the Dots in Early Childhood Education. And Rafa is with me, Casita, and
Mhm.
sometimes we dance together. And we just want to invite you always to know that we would love to hear from you. If you have questions, if you have a topic that you would like for us to talk about, something specific, just let us know, and we'll even maybe bring you on as a guest if you would like to join us.
Sounds great. Well, with that, Pat,
Yeah.
we'll say toodles for now. I guess. Till
Toodles. It
next
looks
time.
like a very snowy sky still behind you, Rafa. Let's see what happens. We've just
Yeah.
come through a big snowstorm, but it was a nice warm space to be with you tonight. So thanks, Rafa.
Likewise. Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.